Previously on the Partners Meeting podcast.
No, it's like the acoustic crap that I'm not like super hot on. It's like this, like not even like it's not even like folksy. It's like this. I can't even.
So, what would you rather do than listen to his music? Would you rather get a nail shot through your hand? Would you rather get stung by a bee? Would you rather get cayenne pepper in your eyeballs?
I mean, like what? What are you? I was gonna answer that.
I know. I want you to answer that.
Welcome to the Partners Meeting, a weekly recap of Mad Men Season 7 Part 2, right here on the Bouchel Review. My name is Aaron Hartung, and as always, I'm joined today by Senior Partner Joseph.
Greetings.
Head of Account Sean.
Hello there.
And Creative Director Katie.
Good day.
Before we ride down the milk and honey route, we have some old business to take care of. On last week's show, Sean delivered a memorable critique of hippie hitchhiker Ari Herstad. Through the magic of social media, Ari listened to the episode and offered this response to Joseph's colorful question, quote, "I'd probably go with cayenne pepper in the eye, even though nail gun to the hand was awfully tempting." First off, Joseph, what did you make of Ari responding to your question?
I mean, I think that it just showed that my curiosity was universal. You know, if Sean didn't like the music, what would he rather have done? He wanted to get a gauge, like I did. You know, what's the scale?
Okay,
He obviously hates himself.
Sean, what are your final thoughts on your Twitter battle with Ari Herstad? I mean, he heard everything you had to say last week. What is your reaction to that?
Well, he would have heard it one day or another, especially with you forcing him to listen to it by tweeting him.
I didn't force anyone to do
I guess he
anything.
didn't have to listen to it, but it was just fascinating to see him respond, and then me being semi-self-conscious of everything, but realizing, well, I wouldn't have said that if I didn't think I was right.
I don't know him, but I have more respect for him than I did.
Agreed.
From the last
Agreed.
episode.
You know what?
You're right.
I would say this, he is a
Katie
good sport.
is right.
He is a
Yeah.
good
Good
sport.
sport.
He is a good sport. And now, I mean, think about this. Someone who's actually been on Mad Men has listened to this podcast, so I'm going to interpret that as we're the official podcast of Mad Men.
Yeah,
Official.
I mean, that's what that means, right? If someone who's on the show listens to it.
That's
You
a
know,
lot of pressure.
I bet you that if we wrote into John Hamm, I mean, what has he got to lose? It's his last, he's finishing it up. I hear that he's a very likable guy. I bet you that he would contact us.
I don't think so.
No.
You don't think so?
He has better things to do.
Why? He's got no job now. I mean, sure.
What are you talking about? He probably has
like.
like 3 or 4 projects going down the pipeline.
I don't know. Once if you had just done a 7-season series, wouldn't you take a break for a while?
Okay,
I mean, I
he's
feel
in
like I would.
Bermuda, relaxing on a beach.
Chillaxing. Definitely.
Now let's talk about the penultimate episode of Mad Men. It focused on 3 characters dealing with significant changes in their lives. Don has officially retired from the advertising business and is cruising through the USA when his car breaks down in Oklahoma. Pete seems to be content at McCann when old Doug Phillips shows up and offers him a new life in Wichita. And after struggling up the stairs at school, Betty gets some bad news. Where should we start?
Betty, of course.
Betty getting the big C.
Oh.
Man. I don't know. It's part of me wasn't super surprised, but I think maybe I was also anticipating anything happening. So, which is also in the next episode, I'll be anticipating anything happening between now and then. I think that's what Matthew Weiner's really good at. Is like not
Definitely keeping people on their toes,
Yep.
right? Like an episode happens and you're not really sure where it's going to go.
I think it's great because Betty, for whoever hates Betty, everyone's like, this is so great, I can't wait for her to be gone. And for whoever loves her, kind of like what Sally said, she loves the tragedy, so you can kind of sympathize with her and just, feel bad for her again.
That's really harsh. People just want her gone, so it's like cheering for.
I think if I remember right, a lot of the early, at least online criticism of Mad Men, the first few seasons, was people just didn't like January Jones. They didn't like her acting. They didn't like how the character was written. after the character was divorced from Dawn, people would say, why are we still following this character? Because she's not married to Dawn anymore. I thought it was kind of a powerful episode. I think it was the most powerful, emotional episode of this second half of season 7 to me. And I also feel like it'll probably be surpassed by the next one.
Yeah. I would say that it's probably the most powerful episode since Lane dying. And what's sort of unique about this show, much like one of my favorite plays, Thornton Wilder's Our Town, is in that play, for the first 2 acts, when you watch it, you're like, this is just really boring. It's really boring, and it's almost like he does that intentionally, because in the 3rd act, spoiler alert, the main character has died, and she's able to go back and see what she missed through just mundane, banal living. And, you know, we love this show because we're going through these characters, we're seeing their lives, but it really takes... The deaths in this show, I feel like, really stir things up. When Cooper goes, when Lane goes, and now Betty, you know, maybe she hasn't yet died, maybe, you know, she did, maybe walking up the stairs was like her last swan song or whatever, but...
yeah, I don't think we'll see Betty again.
I don't think we'll see her again.
I'd be really surprised if we see Betty or Sally in the next
since we
episode.
haven't seen her die, I'm just saying that it's a possibility. But it's just really interesting. It has such a weight to it. It really stirs up the rhythm of the show in, I think, a poignant and delightful way.
What did you think of, when Mad Men first starts, when Betty's going to her therapist, she often talks about how she's still getting over the death of her mother. Then later, I think it's around season 3, we see the death of her dad, Grandpa Gene, when he dies. So, at least in the character of Betty's life, we've seen a lot of death surrounding her. And now she's trying to maybe learn a little bit from that and says to Sally, I don't want you to have to go through what I had to go through.
Yeah, I think it's really mature of Betty. Like, it's a final hurrah. And she's finally matured enough to kind of understand what her role is.
Because she never would have said that in season 1. No. But now it makes sense because she's come a ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like people don't give Betty enough credit. She's a lot more intelligent. And I think that's the big thing was that weird dinner with Henry, and like she's like kind of stating her opinion and stuff. And really says a lot of good points, and he's like tries to like, oh no, don't you can't do that kind of stuff. You can't be like a thinking person, and she actually is, and she's going to school now, and
she's more than a housewife.
Yeah, she is, and I think that's why she fits a role within the show. I mean, I was kind of irritated at her, but was it actually at her character or January Jones or whatever? But now seeing it from this point, I think she fits in a lot. With that like suburban mundane lifestyle, it makes sense that she was a certain way, and now this like huge event just happened, and how is she reacting to it? She's using like whatever history that we've seen or what she's bringing up with Sally, and it's really just kind of I think that what is the emotional punch of it at the end.
Yeah, that scene where it's the juxtaposition of Betty struggling to walk up those same stairs that we saw her fall down at the beginning of the episode, and then that voiceover when Sally's reading the letter, that was really powerful to me, I thought.
Yeah, I think that, and I've heard that same criticism about January Jones not being, and I thought the same thing. She's not as strong an actress, it seemed. And I couldn't, at first I thought it was just like, well, she's doing the best that she could. But as time goes on, like Sean said, I wonder, she's either not that as great of an actress, or she's brilliant. Because I
thought
like
she did great,
right, because
in
I
this
feel
episode.
Like, well, not just this episode, but the whole series, because her character is that, like Sean said, sort of really done up, a complete facade, and in a way mundane housewife, and that was
and aloof sort of from time to time.
But with all the characters, and I think it's great because it demonstrates life. You can't look at any specific part. They are the sum of their parts, and I think we're getting that with Betty, where it's like who she was in season 1 readily plays into who she later became in season 7, and we see that with Pete and his wife, but yeah, it's just great to watch that transformation, because at the end, like Katie said, I really think that she, for maybe the first time, came from a place of some extraordinary wisdom. The way that she talked to Sally, even the way that she said, "I've come to peace with it," because
she wanted to clarify, I'm not quitting, I've just accepted that this is what's going to happen.
Right.
And whether it's a year or 9 months, or even if we pushed it out to 2 years, I'm still going to arrive at that same destination.
And I don't even know, they probably knew it then, but when they said lung cancer, I was like, that's it. Because I think that lung cancer's got one of the highest mortality rates, because especially when it's spread to her bones and her lymph nodes, like, she's done. There's no coming back.
I like that she maintained her vanity, though. By the end, she just still wanted that photo of her and Henry and in her dress or whatever. You know, I just like that she still included that in her letter.
Well, she wanted to. She knew that when she dies, she wants to look at her best, and in her mind, her best was that blue dress that she wore with Henry.
And I mean, it's really sad.
Yeah, no, like it was really sad, because you have to think about, like, imagine being that kid, and then, you know, obviously Sally wasn't supposed to read it. You know, the instructions were, don't read this until I die, but because it's Sally and she's rebellious, she read it anyways. And you imagine what that scene will be. We'll obviously never see it as TV viewers, but, you know, the mom's dead, then you have to kind of dig through the closet and find that dress and give the instructions to the guys at the funeral home.
I don't know if we might see it, because they jumped like a month or two from when Dawn just left New York, right?
Usually there's a month jump in between each episode, though, so that's not that big of a surprise. At least I think that's what usually happens.
But I feel like
there are very few episodes, I think, where an episode ends and then the following episode picks up like 2 or 3 days later. Usually there's a little
gap,
2 to 4 week period of time being advanced.
But I wouldn't be surprised if they took a bigger jump here or there, but at the same time, wouldn't be. Again, they're setting it up to the point where I wouldn't be surprised at all these weird curveballs they're throwing, or like, again, it could possibly go really anywhere at this point, and I wouldn't just be shocked unless some really weird shit happened, like space stuff, or like something supernatural happens. Like,
so that would shit that won't happen.
Yeah, basically, meteor comes down.
You never know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mutations
With
happen.
space
Superheroes are there. I don't know.
Okay. So you're saying, like, just in case there's a crossover with like Marvel's Age of Ultron, and then they all become superheroes.
I mean, Thor's timeless. He's been around for
ages. And Trudy's ageless.
Yeah. I just think that the part that was the most moving in this episode for me was Sally. And I had mentioned when we were watching it that I would say that the two heroes, if you were to find two heroes in this show, to me it's Sally number 1. And that only really came about in the last 2 seasons, and Peggy number 2. Those are 2 people that I think we all find ourselves cheering for. And Sally, because the poor girl, as Betty said, she goes to the beat of her own drum. But she, to me, represents our look into our parents' life. Because what have we seen? We've basically seen the screw-ups of what could have been our parents. We've seen, I think about this when I see old people. I'm always like, we see them as a sweet old person. But for all we know, that person served in a war. For all we know, that person cheated on his wife. For all we know, that person was, as suave as I was trying to be at 20, whatever. And with poor Sally, it's like they dump everything on her. Henry can't handle himself. And even Betty says, you need to take care of this because Henry won't be able to do it. And you realize, like, Sally is the superhero in this story. Because Don's not able to take care of himself. Betty's not able to take care of himself. And
you have to think,
Sally perseveres.
Betty has to be going to Sally because Henry's going to be struggling. Henry's not the father of those 3 kids. Don's not going to do anything. I mean, it's Don. Come on. You can't count on Don.
But that's the thing.
But here's the thing, though. That's why I think she goes to Sally, and that's why it's kind of powerful, too, when Henry's like, hey, guess who showed up for dinner tonight? And Sally's there, and Betty walks out of the room. But then there's that moment when Sally gestures over to Jean to come to her, and she's kind of realizing, I'm going to have to kind of take care of everyone once Mom goes.
Right.
Like I'm going to have to be the rock.
That's what makes her extraordinary.
I think that scene with Sally and Henry is like a big revealer. He's like, it's okay for you to cry,
and then he cries.
Right.
Yeah,
and she just like is like right there, and she's like, all right, this is happening.
And
I
to
have
me,
to like fulfill this thing now.
That's such a shitty thing to do to a kid, because Sally can't be older than, what is she, 14, 15?
I think she's 16 years old.
16 years
I
old.
mean, I know
but
the actress is
But
16,
put yourself in the situation to have a grown man who maybe by now she has accepted as her stepdad. I mean, I don't know. It's sort of like that. She represents that moment in life when you realize your parents didn't know what they were doing, and they're just humans, and they did no better. And in a way, that's sort of the bittersweet tragedy when they pass away. Of like, they are this comprehensive person. You can't label them as being good and bad because they just have this plethora of faults, but also successes. And what are what is it?
Christopher Stanley, the guy who plays Henry Francis, I thought he did a great job.
Well,
Yeah.
Usually he's not given that much to work with in terms of emotional dialogue or scenes. I thought he was really great in this episode.
But he was still very structured in his speech. I don't even remember what he said, but when he was explaining to Sally, it was just like so business-like.
But
He was like, come on, man!
Your mother is sick. It's very bad.
yeah.
This is what's going to... You can cry.
And then he cries. But the big thing that hit me, what he said was, what am I gonna do? Like, he's just like weeping and like, what am I gonna do?
It was tough to see.
It shows that like, they didn't have anything figured out. It's like when Don says to Sally in a previous episode, "You're going to be better." I mean, I think Sally already is.
Yeah.
I think that she already is, and that's what everyone wants, is to have your children succeed where you failed. And God knows Sally's got a ton of failures to look at to try to, find the success.
Well, speaking of Don, the episode opens with Don having a dream of him getting pulled over by a cop who says, we've caught you, like we know who you are. And Don quickly awakens, and that kind of sets this ominous tone for the rest of the episode. Something that's always existed since season 1, which is, will anyone ever find Don out for his ruse of being really Dick Whitman?
But let's go over what really happens. Is like, it was weird that he tells the truth at this like VA meeting, VA, right?
Yeah. It was a VA fundraiser.
And
The only truth, the only time he's ever actually told that truth,
Right.
in that way.
The story of him killing his CO, but he's told the story of how he's taken that person's identity. You're right. He's never told the story of, I'm actually responsible for why that person died.
yeah. But the big thing was, what happens after all this? He's like, he opens up and is truthful. The person uses him as a fall guy to then take like the cleaner Andy, him, who then uses him as the fall guy to take the money and basically.
But Andy wasn't part of that conversation, though.
No, I'm saying like the connection is like that person is deceptive and like fake in a weird, like he's like supposed to be this just guy who just gets the booze and is like kind of righteous, and then uses Don, and Don, when he's being truthful, is in a way punished by like the townspeople who incorrectly accuse him of taking the money and hit him in the face with the phone book a couple times, and it's just kind of a weird like.
Well, there was a little parallel story there.
Yeah.
So this guy is kind of, let's say, an up-and-coming Dick Whitman, someone who's trying to find his way in the world and maybe take advantage of people, and even says to Don, when I was cleaning out your room, I could have stolen your stuff, but I didn't take nothing.
Yeah.
Anything. And Don says to him, I don't know if you realize this, but if you were to steal all of this money from this fundraiser, you'd have to leave this town and maybe become someone you aren't, and because you're young and reckless, maybe you don't realize how hard that is. He obviously didn't say, because I know myself personally, but we as the audience know that.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like Mad Men is doing right now. That's really interesting is characters are coming to resolutions, and not necessarily to close off who that character is, but for instance, we see the development in Betty. we see that she's matured. With Pete and Trudy, we see that they had their faulty ways and they're kind of seen the light. And with Don, I still don't get it, because like with him, I don't know where he is. He still seems like he's lost. He still seems like he's immovable and unchanged. And you just wonder
there was something that I thought was a big change in the episode, which was when Don was talking to the cleaning guy Andy, and he said, how did you become rich? He specifically says in the past tense, I used to be in the advertising business. So in his mind, he's clearly done with advertising.
But the thing is,
which is a huge change, because since the beginning of the show, he's always been in advertising.
It's a huge change, but is it a change in a forward direction? You can change from the side.
I think so.
I don't know, though, because... And maybe he knows, and obviously maybe we'll find out in the final episode, but to me, it didn't indicate any change. To me, it seemed to suggest that, once again, Don is running away from something.
What is Don running away from?
I don't know, but that's what I'm saying, is that when I watch his scenes, when I watch his character... The other characters seem like they flow in chord progressions and find harmony. Maybe there's a dissonant thing, but it always resolves to harmony. And with Don, it's like he's dissonant the entire time, and maybe even gets more like Igor Stravinsky kind of. You don't even know what kind of music it is. It's just very abrasive, and I don't know.
Are we doing the musical chord thing?
We're doing
again?
the musical
chord thing. We've already done the musical chord thing.
I think in metaphors. I can never think point A to point B. I think point A gets to point B by adding 1 and 4 together. I don't know what it means, but it gets me there.
When you're watching the episode, and I don't know if everyone felt the same way, but when he's invited to that VA fundraiser and he walks in and the guy's like, hey, this is John, he was in Korea. Hey, we know a buddy over here, he was in Korea, you come on over. Did everyone just sort of tense up for a little bit and go, is this it? Like, is this happening?
Is this the guy that pegs him as Dick Whitman?
Right. And is this the moment where, I should say, too, it was kind of an interesting psych-out because we actually have already seen that. It happened in the first season.
Right.
Don was on a train once, and a guy was like, hey, Dick Whitman, remember Korea? And Don was like, okay, leave me alone. I'm on the train. Leave me alone. But we have already seen that. So I liked that there was that tension to the scene, even though it never happened.
It was titillating. I was titillated.
Say it one more time.
I was titillated.
Okay.
Because they even give you that extra little bit, that extra little tweak, if we're going with the whole word titillated, but where it's like, show me your face. Show me the side, like, he can only see the side of his face. And I thought for sure when he turns, he'd be like, Dick Whitman.
Jerry Fandango. Jerry Fandango, better known as Pam's shitty fiance, Roy, from The American Office.
Fandango.
Is his name really Fandango?
I think in the credits he was listed as Jerry Fanning, but one of the vets calls him Fandango.
Oh,
I guess a nickname. Hey, Fandango, get over here. Dick, Don from Korea.
Well, I also think, what is the worst that could ever happen with this information about him coming into the wrong hands? So what? What, he'd be put in jail? So what? Who cares? Like, that's it.
Right. It's sort of, there are no consequences in terms of the legality of it.
It's
so,
just,
like, what? You'd pay a fine and have to fill out more paperwork.
But doesn't Don seem afraid of it?
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's like the build-up that no one can ever know. It's not that people can actually know and that it can be found out and be fine. It's like the wondering of what could ever happen that could be wrong.
Really,
from
it's more, it's less the secret about being Don Draper and more the secret of what he did.
But
even though he didn't like reveal that part of it, the whole, I killed this guy and then I stole his identity. He never says that part, the I stole his identity part. But it was, I believe, probably the first time that he ever told that story, that he was responsible for the death of the real Don Draper.
But it was also an accident. It's not like he did it on purpose.
It wasn't malicious, but
it would still weigh on you for sure. I would think.
Yeah, but I just think, I don't know. Go ahead.
But the thing is like, he's owned up to stealing someone's identity. To me, it's not the stealing of the identity that Don fears. To me, it's the identity that he left. it's like Dick Whitman's still chasing him, because when Pete, he's a little nervous in the I think it's the first season, when Pete tries to out him to Roger, and Roger's
Bert Cooper,
and Bert Cooper's like, who cares? Mm-hmm. And Don Draper didn't seem so shaken. He's like, okay, but in this one, it was like, I felt like he was afraid. Like we were tense. We were afraid that guy was going to say, "You're Dick Whitman." I don't know. That's what I felt.
I think it's also in sort of the bigger structure of the entire show. You have to think the first few seasons of the show, particularly the first season, was driven by this whole Don Draper has a false identity, and each episode would always hint at that a little bit. And after maybe season 2 or 3, that story became less of the catalyst of the show, less of a driver, and the show transitioned to something else, which was just Don and his relationships with people at work, and other side characters got bigger roles. Like, you're more interested in Peggy, more interested in what Pete's doing. And the show became less of, who is Don Draper? I mean, when you think of, let's say, seasons 5, 6, and 7, who cares? That's never a thing. Mm. But I think they want to revisit that a little bit just to close that chapter that was originally opened kind of at the beginning of the book.
I think, to me, it seemed like there was a sense that of things breaking down. You know, to me, it seemed like,
well, the car breaks down.
Betty's
body is breaking down.
Even lights flickering. The TV turns off when Pete's in the kitchen. Now, granted, Trudy may have turned the light on and off, but
you get the feeling that the lights went out. Or
they just went out, and the soda machine broke down. And to me, it seemed to suggest that Don's persona, or you know, if he's owned it, that's breaking down. You know,
there's definitely a motif of that.
Right. But that's why I feel like they call back to Dick Whitman, because that was, you know, he goes to Don Draper because he wanted to abandon that shell, and now I feel like the one that he's in now is not doing it for him.
Well, speaking of the lights going out in Pete's old home, let's talk about the Pete story.
Let's talk about the Pete story.
Let's do it. The big thing about the last pair about Don was like him giving that car to Andy, his car to Andy, and taking the bus, and like, kind of giving Andy that opportunity, I guess. That's what I saw. It's like,
don't waste this.
Don't waste this. Here's an opportunity. You can do something with this.
Which, did anyone have the callback to Saving Private Ryan, where Tom Hanks is like, Ryan, earn this. Do you remember that scene?
No.
I didn't think of it while watching it.
Oh,
but I
did.
do remember it after. You're brilliant. And people listening to the podcast, they could only imagine the look that was on your face when you delivered that line.
And how your hand was shaking like Tom Hanks.
You've never seen that movie?
No,
We're
I'm
reviewing
very
it
to say it
here on the Bouchel Review.
So, one thing that I thought was really interesting about that is when he gives him the car, Don seems really happy and satisfied afterwards. Like, the car drives away, and it's very few times I feel on this show where you see Don with a big smile on his face. Yeah. He was like, you know, I paid it forward.
It's because he's becoming a hippie. He's going out to the West Coast and becoming a hippie.
That is
he's gonna grab some drugs.
It was a striking image, though, to see him on the bus stop. You know, hands on his thighs, just kind of
all he has is a Sears bag.
Yeah,
he's a hippie now.
Right. He's a hippie.
Anyways, you wanted to go to the Pete Trudy story, which I think we should visit.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was just one more other time thing. I'm remembering stuff now.
Sure,
I mean, like swimming pool scene, like where he basically like traces his eyes up that like sunbathing lady, just like
it's the Don we all know.
Yeah, but
we've become all too familiar with that Don.
And then like, is it like implied that her kids and her dweeby husband is coming in to swim in the pool, and he's like, yeah, whatever.
To me, it seemed like a beautiful dream that was broken. You know, when he lays eyes on her, he is transfixed, and he follows the curves of her body, and then almost as abruptly, it's like, you know, husband shouts, kids run in the scene, she looks up, and it's done. He dives in the pool.
Like it was like underwater.
Yeah, it was like this momentary mirage, and then back to reality.
I mean, was it just like, the moment of like, I'm going to be doing, or I'm going to, you know, work on this thing, and then it gets interrupted?
I thought the decision to shoot it that way, the directorial decision, because Matthew Wander directed this episode and also will be directing, or has directed, the finale, He what?
He likes to have control.
He does.
Wants
I've
control.
heard that. I've heard that.
I knew it.
Knew it. Minor. The reason I think it was filmed like that was because, as the audience, we're supposed to know that Don still, for lack of a better word, struggles with that. Struggles with, let's say, the temptation of not being able to control his own physical desires and just wanting to chase after women. But in that instance, it was only broken by these people showing up. Had they never showed up, Don probably would have tried to make a move on that person. So I think it's to show the audience that, yeah, Don's still thinking about that stuff, but I'm not going to waste your time showing you another scene of Don hooking up with someone at the motel that we've all seen hundreds of times before.
But see,
Or he's going to become a celibate monk on the West Coast.
that could
Not happen.
Yeah. So, well, but the thing is, I saw it a different way in that it was a recall to the Don that we know, but he's not that. I think in a way he's changing. I don't know how, but I think that's what the abrupt wake up call was. Is that like, oh hey, there's Don Drake. Wait, no, where'd he go? You know, like that's what it felt like to me when I watched it. That's what it felt like to me.
Let's talk a little bit about the third character that went through a lot of changes. Pete, approached by, and we talked about it in that first episode. Are we going to see Duck Phillips again? Here we go. We dusted him off. Duck Phillips showed up.
I fucking hate that guy.
He's such a mess.
Why do you hate Duck Phillips?
He's just a piece of shit. He represents, like, the ultimate piece of shit.
Because of Chauncey. He let Chauncey to die.
Yes, exactly. Chauncey, and he's a recovering alcoholic who can't recover.
Boom.
Who do you
Ever.
hate more, Duck Phillips or Lou Avery?
Ooh.
Both. They're equivalent. They suck.
I would say I hate Duck Phillips more because I think Lou Avery's kind of funny.
I agree with that. The thing is, I felt manipulated from the beginning with Duck Phillips. It kind of unveils itself as the episode goes on because Pete doesn't know what's happening. Why was Duck in the building in the first place? And was he scheming with Herm the whole time, which seemed to be like kind of implied, you know, that they were planning to move Pete so they could like acquire Learjet as a part of, you know, it's just this whole conquest thing that he's all about. That McCann's
so
all about.
you think that Duck Phillips was working with Jim Hobart beforehand?
Yeah. Oh, it sounded like he said that at some point that he visited Jim about, you know, making this work and letting, you know, acquiring Lear and like.
But he says that he visits Jim Hobart after he's already spoken to Pete.
Oh.
You're thinking that he did that even before he first spoke to Pete?
No, after. But like he spoke to Pete. I think Duck is like trying to be this like puppet master in a way, trying to make everything work in his favor. And Pete, I think, is realizing it partly through it and like, what are you trying to do? And then eventually realize, oh wait, I'm getting a really good deal out of this whole thing.
What did you think of when Duck first approaches Pete? Pete's a little apprehensive to the deal. Duck turns to him and says, hey, for old time's sake. And then Pete later, when he's trying to get Trudy to go to the dinner with him, he uses the exact same line on her, but she's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And he's like, how did it work with Duck Phillips?
I think, just both smarmy characters. Because we talked about who would win in a fight between Lou Avery and Duck Phillips, and we said that it would be a great match, maybe a Mayweather-Pacquiao-esque match. But Duck Phillips,
that was a horrible fight, though.
It could have been good. But Duck Phillips fights dirty. He's slime. Whereas Lou at least has standards. He's got a code,
a military code.
Do you think the reconciliation between Pete and Trudy was earned? Was that valid as a story?
Hell no!
Yes,
Why?
It was.
Why wasn't it, in your mind?
She knows what a piece of shit he is. Yes, he's also a piece of shit. Just as Duck Phillips is.
We've seen Pete be a horrible person. But have we also seen him learn from those mistakes? And here's the thing, it's not like Trudy's like, I totally excuse all the things you do. Because she says right away, if you ever do this, if you ever hurt me again, it's over. Because I've always thought the strongest couple on the show prior to seeing them getting divorced was Pete and Trudy.
No, but I feel
What?
like
Because they're equals.
Listen,
They're equals.
Think about the relationships.
What, they're equally as sleazy?
Well,
No,
think
no.
about the relationships you've seen on the show, right? Think
Don
about
and
Betty.
Don and Megan, Roger and Joan, Peggy and...
Dawn and Peggy.
There
you go.
Not
That's
dating.
not a relationship.
It doesn't matter. They
Yes.
want to. You know they do.
No, they
Yeah,
don't. It's
not a
father
relationship
daughter.
that you see, though.
mentor and mentee. But no, I think the big thing is that Pete presents this character of like this person who has like a lot of different sides and is manipulative, and you don't really know where he's truly coming from, and he's like always trying to weasel his way up to the next level somehow. And like I mean, me as a viewer, I don't trust him, but in this episode, we're kind of placed on his level, and we're kind of dragged with him through all this like weird, like Duck Phillips is manipulating him so that we're seeing it from that perspective. But at the same time, I still can't feel any sympathy towards him, and I really did not want Trudy to accept that. Like, I really wanted her to just be like, no, this is going to happen again. I mean, what we've seen in the past episodes is like, or past seasons is like, things repeat themselves constantly. And even his brother, like, had said something like, they brought up their father and all that kind of...
Which is a great scene when he has
right.
the dinner with
Yeah.
Bud, who I don't think we've seen in a while.
It's just in them to, like, cheat. That's what they're basically
Well,
saying.
and they're trying to understand it, and they're saying, the father figure, the father in their life, he did that. They saw it happen all the time. That's what they're influenced by. But does that excuse it?
But you look at Pete was trying to show his brother that are you really happy? I think that Pete did learn. I think it's interesting that people
because Pete says the line.
Right.
It's going to feel great at first, like when you cheat on your wife, but then it doesn't.
And I think
it's a short-term solution to something.
People have such a there's such a strong stigma about Pete because of the slimy weasel we saw him as. But you got to think. Here's a good example. When he has sex with who is his real wife in real life, I think. And what season was that?
What?
The woman that he had.
I can't remember what the actress's name is, but she played Rory on Gilmore Girls. The woman who is later put into a psych.
That's his real wife. So
they met on the show and then got married.
Yeah, so that's his real wife. But the reason why he goes after her, to me, it seemed like in that season is because he was jealous that Don could just do this, And so he decides, I'm going to take, I'm going to skim a little off the top. I'm going to take some for myself. That's when he cheats on Trudy. But then later on, it was a few episodes ago when he's like, Don, we're going to go golfing. You're not going to change? He goes, no, I'll just take out my jacket. I'll roll up my sleeves. They're going to love it. He's like, you know what? They probably will. It's because I think that Pete accepts who he is. Before, when he was slimy, like Sean said, he was constantly trying to climb up to a rung. And I think that over time, he's realized, you know what? That's not me. I am a stiff stooge who's just...
But he's a good
sales
guy.
Right, he's a good salesman.
He knows
climb
when
up
he's...
a rung, like, women-wise?
No. Like when
in the business world.
In the business world,
but
the
he's
first
still
season.
trying to do that.
Is he though? Because he's trying to do that within his capability. He's not trying to undercut anyone. He's not trying to expose Don to try to oust Don.
I think I understand where you're coming from because at McCann he's seemed to have risen to the top.
Mm-hmm.
He's like he fixed a bunch of stuff.
Doug calls him the mayor of McCann.
Oh right, he just like made it to the top. And I think it comes down to a trust issue for me, and also it seems like in general are people redeemable, and I think that's like the why Vincent Kartheiser like he plays the character really really well, and I think that's part of maybe what he does is like in a weird way like can humanize him. We see him as this like slimy guy, but then it's brought back. But I still feel like I don't trust him as a
I don't trust him at all.
Yeah, I'm on Katie's side.
And I don't think Trudy should at all.
Yeah, right.
I think
So when he has that scene where he shows up to the house at 4 a.m. or whenever it is and approaches Trudy, and he says to her, I've only loved you. Like, you're the only person who I've genuinely loved. Did you believe him?
No, I did not believe him for a second.
So what other women do you think he's loved? Not saying that you can't be sexually attracted to other people, but does that mean you actually love them?
I guess, okay, I don't see that. Now I take that back. Maybe I don't know.
I think he may love her. That might be true.
That may be true,
right?
yeah.
But that's not his intention. His intention is to have a woman by his side in Wichita. Who's going to move to Wichita by themselves?
But the thing is I don't think that he's looking for an ornament to put on his mantle in Wichita. I think that he has realized like the greater things in life. That's why I think it's so great is because both of them, like we mentioned in a previous episode, that Pete went out and he was a freaking idiot, and Trudy went out and she did some dumb things too. And
what? Trudy didn't do anything.
I'm not saying no, but like she.
But we learned in that previous episode because when Pete talks to her, she's like, "I'm not happy out here. I don't have a lot of friends out here. Whenever I go to events, it's always husbands trying to hit on me because I'm always there by myself." Like, she's not happy. And I'm not saying that she would have a perfect life being with Pete again, but they seem to be like two characters that really fit each other well. It's like they boost the skills of the other person well.
But and I think that, okay, I remember.
And they know how to dance. I mean, remember that scene
That's
at Roger and what was his secretary's
That's a
name?
strong point.
When they were doing the Charleston. It was
Yeah.
quite
But,
impressive.
I feel like the grounds of their marriage initially, we were getting this like ideal picture, but it's like it felt very stilted, and it was like these two like socialite, like we have family names behind ourselves, and like it's almost like an arranged marriage in some weird aspect of like just the two kind of like rich families bringing their kids together, and then like gonna have this ideal like family situation. And that, I think partly that's what Pete is striving for, is like, we're gonna move to Wichita, we're gonna be a family unit, and it's all gonna be like Leave It to Beaver, sunshine and rainbows and all that garbage. And it's like, and the reality is, that's why it's like he's working towards this idealism that I don't think will exist.
I don't
no
think
matter what, because it's like, it's not, it can't be like black or white. It's going to be this weird gray area.
I don't think he's that gullible. I just think that he knows that life will be tough no matter what. I want to spend it with you, though. That's what he knows. And he's like, I screwed up so many times.
Yeah.
And I thought I was moving past it and going, because we've seen in previous episodes when he's like visiting the home there to like drop off some gift for Tammy or whatever, he always kind of takes a longing look, and so in his head he misses that. And it was only just now where he was like, I'm finally going to vocalize that. And Trudy even says, why are you waiting now to tell me what I wanted you to hear 2 years ago?
But I agree. I don't think he's so deluded, because when they first started, that's what it was. It was the joining of two families. It was to have this cookie cutter picturesque thing, and I think that part has been broken away. Much in the same way, have any of you ever seen Fiddler on the Roof? It's a great movie if you've ever got 4.5 hours to kill.
Which one should we see, Fiddler on the Roof or Our Town first?
I would say Fiddler on the Roof, because you can see it in your living room, and Our Town whenever it comes to your
tradition.
Yeah, but they've got this great song in Fiddler on the Roof, where these Tevye and his wife Golda, they come from traditional families. They've been put together in a marriage. They didn't even see each other before the wedding, and Tevye's daughters start to break tradition by marrying for love. This is very new, and so Tevye says to Golda, he's like, wait a minute, do you love me? And she's like, I cook your meals, I wash your sheets. And he's like, no. Do you love me? After 45 years, do you, or whatever, 25 years, I don't know. Do you love me? And then she's like, you know what? I think I do. And I think that's kind of what's happened with Pete and Trudy. Is before, it was like, well, I'm your wife, I'll cook your meals, I'll play the part. And now they're really realizing, you know what? Underneath it all, I actually do love him.
Okay, maybe my skepticism is to why Trudy could even love that sleazebag in the first place. He's such...
So let me ask you this really quick then. Do you think that there's been any change in Pete Campbell since the beginning? Because I would not disagree with you at all. He is totally presented as a sleazebag when the show begins. I'd say even up to as recent as seasons 4 or 5. But in the last 2 or 3 seasons, do you think we've seen a change in how that character is presented to us?
I don't think in the last... Even when he was dating that realtor, I don't think he had changed that much, to be honest. I don't even remember after that. Can anyone enlighten me?
Like what he did?
Like, what has he done recently that you think is really sleazy?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Just because people don't do super sleazy things doesn't mean they're not still sleazy.
But wouldn't it mean that if you're trying to become less sleazy, you would stop doing sleazy things?
I do, therefore I am. Is that the same?
I don't think we've seen like
I am,
any
therefore I do.
redeemable thing from Pete to suggest that he's like fixed, and that's what I'm feeling as
He should be fixed.
like. I mean,
Let it go on the record that Katie thinks Pete Campbell should be
Pete would be great as a eunuch, by the way. But
I've already had one on the show, Bert Cooper.
What?
No, he's not really.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Don't you guys remember when they
he's
read...
not really.
Not the actual actor.
No, but I mean the character himself is not actually castrated.
Yes,
Yeah,
the character himself is, because that's...
No, explain yourself. He is?
In the episode when Roger comes across... He comes across, like, I don't know, Bert's memoirs or
That's right.
Bert's... Oh, I'm sorry. Don comes across Roger's recording of Sterling's Gold. And in the recording of Sterling's Gold, he tells an anecdote about some operation that went wrong, and as a result, Bert Cooper doesn't have balls.
Mm-hmm.
And then he and Peggy laugh about it.
I remember that.
Oh, he lost both of them? That's why they give you a twist.
No, but I think
Jesus.
Bert, like, I don't want to diverge too much, but Bert has his, like, thing with his, like, housekeeper, right? His, like, love that he has.
Yeah, but I mean, we've never really seen him act on it. I mean, you can be attracted to someone and be 80 years old. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're...
And if we learned anything from Game of Thrones, you could have no bits and still like the looks of a lady in Grey Worm.
The question, as
I don't know what that
always,
means
to
at all.
sleaze or not to sleaze? The Pete Campbell
I don't
story.
think he's been sleazy.
I mean, I
Because
think...
you got to think with the realtor, that was long beyond Trudy. He had
I-
free reign to be with whoever he wanted.
He's still fucking sleazy!
I know where you're coming from, and I feel like we've seen, like, Pete, mostly in his past, through the whole season, or whole series, basically, be this, like, character who is trying to learn how to be manipulative, and learn how to be, like, schmoozy, and learn how to be someone who is in control, and now he has it. And what is he, after, like, all that, like, bullshit is cleared out, like, what is he trying to do? And in its way, recapture, like, the things that he had lost because he had all those qualities. But is it because he wants to recreate that veil that everything's cool and everything's okay, and I'm trying to create this ideal life for myself? Or is it that he honestly wants it? And I think that's why we are, like, questioning about this, because I think partly for me, I think he just wants to create another veil to then see what happens after that. But I can see also the point where he also wants that security and, like, comfort in having those solid things in his life. But I think he's played so well that that's why the debate's happening, and that's why, that's why the part is played really well.
I think we also don't know enough from Trudy's side to know what she's even...
Yeah.
We'd have
Because
seen enough
Experience.
stories
Because
from
you
Trudy.
only see Trudy when Pete's around.
Yeah.
And she's sort of a satellite character on the show.
One separate satellite point is that I think it's interesting that in the show, I would say that Pete is the one that has been aged the most. And we obviously know that they did that intentionally by shaving his hair back. But when you
Even
think
though
about
you
it,
never believed that.
oh no, I wanted to believe that he was receding because there would just be one less handsome actor I'd have to compete with. but like Roger gets a little bit more white, but I mean Bert kind of looks the same. I mean they all look pretty similar. Pete's the only one where it's like, oh god, he looks like crap.
Yeah.
But I mean,
true.
like going back to Betty, it's like I feel like she hasn't aged a bit. And
Oh
this
my
is,
gosh.
And the whole cancer thing is like a sign of her mortality, but at the same time, it preserves her as this like beautiful thing when she like even passes. She's gonna be like
embalmed.
she'll be like this weird, perfect specimen of a human being when she dies, probably, and she knows it. And it's like she goes out on a high note in a weird way. She doesn't get to like degenerate like the rest of us.
Wait,
I
she
like-
goes out on a high note dying? of lung
physically
cancer?
on a high note.
Well, as of now.
As of now, but I mean, who knows what she would look like 9 months from now?
But I think
No, she's
I
gonna be
think
beautiful.
her
This is complete fiction.
Wouldn't
even part of her desire to go so quickly, I think relates to her vanity quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
And
Katie's
a little bit,
so right.
Wouldn't it be tragic if, we saw them do it when I think she was pregnant, the actress was, and so they put weight on her, didn't they? I thought that was part of the reason why they put weight on her in the series for a period of time, because the actual actress got pregnant, and they wanted to...
I don't know.
No,
I thought I read that.
Well, even if I remember that her extra weight was prosthetic. Actually, yeah.
But it might be interesting. And
they added striking. Face weight to her to match her body. You think?
Right. But it would be interesting if even for a glimpse, they showed her haggard. They showed her. I don't think that they'll do it, but I think it would be a striking image because for the whole series, she has been, as Katie said, this
weight
Barbie
loss
doll.
Well, was her weight loss then a representation of her kind of coming out of this? So she was vain, and then she gained this weight, and was oh, I feel ugly, and then clears out, and then becomes, hatches out of it, and then becomes this more thoughtful and deep person.
I don't know, but I thought it was a great choice on Matthew Weiner's part to put her through that. What's the female version of an Adonis?
I don't.
Adonis is usually a man, usually a well sculpted man. She is
a babe.
A babe. She is a total babe. Oh my god.
And this ties into Bouchel's Babes of Mad Men.
Babes of
the feature that still has to be done. So let's make some final predictions and theories for the big series finale. One of our listeners, Zach Farber, said, please discuss this on the next podcast, and linked to a 2013 article titled, Where Don Draper Ends, D.B. Cooper Begins. This theory has gained a lot of traction around the internet in the last few weeks, and it goes like this. In November 1971, a man known only by the alias D.B. Cooper hijacked a plane for a $200,000 ransom, parachuted out of the aircraft while over Oregon, and was never heard from again. This true story is also the only skyjacking case in history that remains unsolved. Josef, I know this theory has caught your attention. What is your take on the D.B. Cooper theory?
I would say that my take, and I did some research into D.B. Cooper a while back, finding it just to be an interesting story. My take is that it's strange because I can absolutely see them going there. I don't know if they will, but even though I know that could be the endings, let's say that is the ending, and I knew it was coming, I still think I'm going to enjoy the hell out of it, because I still think that Matthew Weiner will do it in a way that is just glorious. And in a way, to me, it seems like a really high note, but not so much the finale like in Breaking Bad, where it's like, Walter White is dead, spoiler alert, the series can't go on because Walter White is dead. To me, it would be like a great, Godzilla question mark of the end. But the one thing that I can't see is I have a hard time imagining Don Draper holding a plane up. I have a hard time picturing him hijacking a plane.
And for money. Why would Don be hijacking a plane for money? Why does Don need money?
If Matthew Weiner were to do that, he's going to do it one of two ways. One, he's going to just stick straight to the story and not give any reason, as we don't have a reason for why D.B. Cooper did what he did. Or he's going to give us... he's got to sort of tell us why Don Draper would want to parachute over Oregon and then go to Mexico and disappear. Like, what's in Mexico for Don? I don't know. To me, that would be more of like a Sopranos ending where you're like, what?
I can't picture Don parachuting.
Well, he was in the military, though.
I just can't.
You can't picture him parachuting.
I mean...
How about bungee jumping, if it existed in 1970?
Parasailing?
No. He doesn't do anything active but sit by a pool.
Sean, what do you think? Do you think the D.B. Cooper...
I think... the one thing I wanted to think about a lot is that Don doesn't know about Betty's condition because he doesn't have a cell phone like everyone. He has no way of communicating with,
fax machines haven't been invented yet. How would he get the news?
Yeah, he has no idea, how or what has happened. So I think part of the next episode will be him, finding out and dealing with it. So I'm thinking that he's going to be back in the East Coast for one thing. The other thing is, I have no idea. I feel like they've set it up so anything could possibly happen with Don, and
But specifically the D.B. Cooper theory, do you think that that's valid? Will we see any signs that prove it?
See, I don't see like the Betty's condition and Don like hijacking an airplane. Like that's because they set it up that Betty has this condition or has cancer. Let's just get straight to the point. Because they set that up, I don't see how he could find the time to go hijack an airplane in between. Unless that's how he like released it. He's like, I'm so like sad and frustrated, I'm going to hijack an airplane and disappear.
You have to ask yourself the question, how would he ever find out that Betty had cancer? Because no one knows where he is right now.
I can't see them not connecting that happening wow, that didn't make any sense. But I can't see how they can avoid that Don will find out. I think that'll be something
because earlier in the episode we see Don on the phone with Sally and he says, hey, I'm going to call you next week.
Yeah. So he's going to find out somehow and it's going to, I think, affect him pretty deeply in some way.
Okay.
And I think it'll weirdly reconnect him with Betty. I didn't see this coming. I thought they were just going to be separate, but now that these things are happening and I think Pete's coming back together with Trudy thing kind of hints at obviously they're not going to get back together, but it's going to be, they're going to connect on a certain level with one another.
So I think you're out on D.B. Cooper. Katie, I think you're out. Joseph,
I could see it happening.
You could see it happening.
I truly could. I'm not saying that I am coming out on record saying that they will do that, but I almost felt that in this episode.
So in other words, you're being weak. You're not picking a side.
Well, no, but you could say anything. You could say that spaceships come down from, as Katie said, space. It's unpredictable.
But that's why we're having this podcast.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Is to be bold and to say what we think will happen.
Okay, that's true.
Being bold, I would say that I would be a fool to try to guess what Matthew Weiner's thinking. Being bold, I would say that it would not surprise me at all if he did the D.B. Cooper thing. Being bold, I would say that...
bold, do you think it will happen?
Do I think it will happen? I would say. That's hard to say. It's a 50-50. If he showed me that, it would absolutely make sense. I would not question it. I would thoroughly enjoy it. Do I really think that's what he's going to do? I don't know. It's kind of like with
weak. This is just such a weak answer.
No, it's not weak. Why is that weak?
Because I'm asking.
Well, what do you think then? What do you think?
I don't think it's going to happen at all, and this is why.
Why? Tell me.
Because in the episode, you see that Betty wrote a letter to Sally, and it's dated October 1970. The D.B. Cooper thing happens in November 1971. That means we would have to have a 13-month jump from this episode to the finale.
And why not?
Directly. I just don't think it's going to happen. Why? When have we ever jumped 13 months in between episodes?
But it's the
final
episode.
Not referring to, because we do see big jumps in time between season finales and season premieres. But episode to episode, we never jump that much.
But that's what I'm
saying.
Also,
it's like part of the theory that I've been reading on the internet is like, oh, look at the police sketch drawing. It looks just like Don Draper. No, it doesn't. It's a white guy.
No,
it's a drawing of a white guy.
I think that's crap. But I don't think it's weak to say that I'm not going to make a supposition as to what's going to happen. I'm saying that it is this person's article, this woman that put it up there, it is extraordinary the way that it could go that way. I think it is truly uncanny. But I'm not saying that that's what I think he's going to do.
Here's one thing that I think will happen is because we're not going to jump in time. Let's say the episode ends, I don't know, 2 months from now. So then that puts us at December 1970. If people want to believe the D.B. Cooper thing, they still can, because we'll never jump up ahead to November 1971. So, for the people that do really believe that and do really think it's going to happen, unless we see Don die in the finale, they can always believe that he was D.B. Cooper.
You know what? This is I guess the sticking point is that, to me, you've got with Game of Thrones, George R.R. Martin. He asks the creators of on HBO who they think Jon Snow's mother is, and they give him an answer that he is satisfied with, which means that they probably predicted to the end of the books, of which he has not completed. Now, there's a lot of discussion of Game of Thrones is going to surpass Martin's book writing, and they're going to split. To me, Matthew Weiner doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would be daunted if someone guessed the ending. He's like, you know what? You may have guessed the ending, but I'm going to make it so spectacular you won't care. I'm not saying that means that he's going to do it. I'm just saying that he seems like the guy where it's like he's got his poker hand and he's not showing you what he's going to do, and he doesn't care what you have because he knows that what he's got is going to trump it. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. So here's another internet theory that's kind of been floating around. It's the falling man theory. Ever since the pilot episode of Mad Men, fans have asked who exactly is falling from an office building in the opening credits, and is it a foreshadowing of things to come? Will we see someone jump out of a building, obviously to their demise?
That would seem too contrived to me. To me, when I see that, it seems more symbolic of getting lost in the advertising world.
Yeah, I agree, because we don't see that falling person splattered on the ground.
Right, they fall comfortably into a sofa, and it pulls out. Yeah.
Well, we don't see that either. The only thing we see is like a foot just like slowly rising up and kind of catching them in a weird way. But it's like part of an advertisement. I don't think there's any one person who's going to jump out of a building. And the only time I feel like that's been a big thing was when the stock market completely like crashed out and like people were basically broke. But it's just kind of a weird thing to bring up. I don't know. The intro scene, they just probably make them and separate.
Well, but I'm just saying it's a theory that's been out there for a while because people have seen that scene
Those
over
people
and
are
over
bullshit.
again. Well, and I think actually, and this is just me personally, I think Matthew Weiner actually kind of gave a subtle wink to those people in the previous episode because when Don walks into his office at McCann, he approaches the window and kind of pushes on it to see if it opens and kind of waits. And there's really, if you think about it, no point to him doing that. In the context of the show, I think Matthew Weiner did that as sort of a little wink to those people who believe that kind of falling man theory.
But I saw that as a symbolism for more of being trapped. Being contained.
Okay.
Whereas...
Well, maybe it worked both ways.
Well, yeah, you can open a window and breathe a little, but this is like tight and closed and like you have no control. Like your control is gone when you can't even open a stupid window.
And I saw it as, you see it in hotels now all over the place, but my parents, when we would go to a hotel, they're like, I remember you could be on the 10th floor and they'd still have windows that open. I just saw it as, time-changing technology.
I saw it as a Michael Jackson thing where you hold a baby over a railing.
Oh.
It could be anything. That's what my point is. It could be fucking anything.
Okay. I guess so.
Okay, so another... Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, what if Dawn goes to California and ends up with Anna's sister's daughter raising her child?
Ooh, that's a possibility.
Ooh.
That's
just
a possibility.
Like hanging out with Stephanie, or whatever her name is.
Yeah, I think it was Stephanie. And he always
Those
kind of
two.
played a little paternal figure to her.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she always seemed like she was into it. This is the one that was pregnant with Megan, right?
Yeah, I don't think... I never got that impression that she
Oh,
was
I got
into
the-
Don. I think it was always a family thing.
I got the impression that she kind of...
Yeah, but
maybe not like
but granted,
fawning over him, but like...
when you watch an episode together, every time you're like, oh, those two are going to bone.
No, I'm
They're
not the
gonna
only one
bone.
who says it. I'm
They're
not the
gonna
only
bone.
one who
They're
says
totally
it.
gonna bone.
I
Look
feel-
at, I've often been right.
I must admit, I did feel like that a little bit about Stephanie until she went as a pregnant lady to Megan's in California.
Oh, even the way that her look on the phone when she's talking to Don, to me it seems like it could be very familial, but it's very coy. It's very coy.
Very coy.
It's a little coy. I agree.
Let's make a few more predictions about the finale. Aside from Dawn, what characters are we going to see in the finale? Who are we going to see one last time? I feel we're done with Betty. I feel we're done with Joan. I don't think we're going to see those characters ever again.
We have to see Peggy.
I would hope we see Peggy.
Right.
I don't think we're going to see Pete again. I think Joan, Betty, Pete, they're done. They kind of had their last hurrah.
I think for Pete, it's like we'll hear like what has actually happened through like people gossiping. That wouldn't be, but I feel like we'll have to see Roger for one last time.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see
Sally.
Sally is
We'll see
important, but
Sally.
that's I think
Maybe a phone call with Dawn, and
Well-
she gives the news to him.
I think it was implied that Dawn was kind of heading back east somewhere, When are you coming back? I think Sally asks that, right?
Well, at the end of your road trip.
Yeah, but
he never specified how long the road trip would be.
But I feel like the events of Betty getting cancer would bring him back. And that's what I'm feeling like, is that this...
But that's all contingent on Don making that call to Sally.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be part of the conclusion, is him coming back to, like, kind of close... Like, they can't just, like, leave a bunch of weird loose ends and just continue on. It's going to... I think that's part of it, is they're going to tie up as many little things as possible. And that's what they did with Joan.
Do you think the Betty story is a loose end, though? To me, the episode we just saw, I thought that was wrapped up perfectly.
The loose end is, like, Don and Betty's relationship with one another, which is, like, seems like it's mostly dead, but I think there's, like, something that's going to come up. Because of the kids. I think the kids, like, are the little link that he has to come back for.
But you remember Don's last scene with Betty is a very sweet scene where he's just about to embark on the road trip, and she's, reading that book, and she's like, I'm going to go to school, and he goes, knock him dead, Bertie. I think that's Don's last line to Bertie.
Do you think that in this final episode, as Don has so often done before, he will again see someone who has passed, maybe even Betty, as he saw Bert Cooper, his father, his mother, another ghost? Do you think that there will be Anna Draper, one or more ghost-like figures?
Adam Whitman.
And will they appear like Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader at the end of Return of the Jedi?
Yes. Yes. Maybe it will start with Betty's funeral or something. They jumped that far.
I think it would be extraordinary if Don is out in California or out west, and Betty shows up and they have a conversation. Because when you think about it, when you think about where it started with Don and Betty.
How would Betty get to where he is? How would Betty know where he is?
As a ghost. That's what I'm saying. Is that like she shows up?
As a ghost.
Yeah, as Bert has done before, as all these people have done before.
So she's going to die that quickly in between.
Well, you said they skip like a month.
That's
so say
true.
that the middle.
Yeah, but she was given 9 months.
But there are plenty of people who have lived 2 years after their 1 month sentence, and there are plenty of people who have died, 2 weeks after they said they were given 6 months.
Do you think Betty would die that quickly in a month?
When you think about it, the cancer's in her lungs, her bones, and her lymph nodes.
But we saw her walking upstairs. Fine.
Barely.
But still walking up the stairs.
The cancer's internal. It's killing her from the inside. That's often,
Cancer's internal?
Cancer is internal.
Did you guys know that?
But think about this.
I'm not an MD. So
wouldn't it be a sweet moment if they had a sort of, as a ghost, imagine Don's reaction when he's like, oh my God, what are you doing here? And they have this Betty a knowing conversation because she's dead, sort of like how Bert Cooper comes back as like this old sage. If they have a conversation, I think that would be a very powerful scene on the West Coast. Don, where he's happiest, Betty comes to visit him. They have one of those conversations where it's like, we don't have to pretend in front of each other anymore because you're obviously dead. I'm here, Like that's, I think the beauty of these ghost scenes is that like, Don doesn't have to run or be anything different from these ghosts. He can talk very sincerely to them because they're not there.
Katie, do you think we're going to see Don speaking to a ghost, whether it's Betty or anyone else?
I think he wrapped it up with Betty. I'm sorry.
But do you think he'll see a ghost?
So you don't think he'll speak to Betty either in real life or ghost form again?
But another ghost? Do you think that he'll see another specter?
Maybe God. Maybe he'll see God.
As Matthew Weiner.
Yeah. Maybe he'll see Matthew Weiner as a ghost.
Which characters do you think we'll see in the finale, aside from Don?
Roger.
You think we're going to see Roger?
We have to.
Do you think we're going to see Peggy?
We didn't wrap up with him.
Do you think we're going to see Peggy?
Peggy.
Have we seen the last of Joan?
Probably.
Have we seen the last of Betty?
Probably.
Pete?
What about the TV guy?
Harry Crane. Sleazeball
Come on,
Harry Crane.
Harry! We gotta see him. No, not really. We don't really care.
How long is the last episode going to be? It's like
a little bit longer.
It's twice as long as a standard episode, right?
No. I think it's probably going to be closer to. Well, this most recent episode, I think, clocked in at 57 minutes without commercials. Usually they're around 45.
Yeah.
I would imagine it's probably going to be the same.
What about Glenn?
I think
Glenn's done.
Glenn's done. Lil Avery's done.
Fine, guys.
Doug Phillips
Fine.
is done.
He's dead.
What's his name? Who was like unemployed for a little bit. The office is kind of done.
See, I think we'll see. Obviously, we'll see Don. We'll see Sally. We'll see Roger.
Maybe Stephanie.
Will we
betting-
see Don Chambers again?
No. I'm betting we see Betty again. I'm betting we see Betty. No, I'm betting we see Betty again.
Okay,
I
well,
really do.
Yeah,
In some
How much
shows.
do you want to bet?
Listeners, make
How
sure
much
to
do you
save
wanna
this. Listeners, make
Wait,
sure to
wait,
save
wait.
this
I
podcast.
think that I've just been challenged. How much do you want to bet, Katie? How much do you want to bet?
20.
$20? Can we split the difference and say 10? Because I don't know if I can justify that
Yeah,
with
you're
May.
right. 10.
just
$10?
Justify that.
All right.
with May.
It's happening right now in the Blue Shell Review. I'm betting Katie $10 that we'll see Betty again.
That we won't see Betty.
We're making partners meeting history here. A true deal for those obviously listening. They didn't see the handshake that just went down.
It's going to happen.
If Betty shows up, so let's just go over the rules here. If Betty shows up in the finale,
In any capacity, even
Katie-
if they show her face.
Katie owes. Well, here let's
No.
hold on.
Let's get the terms.
Let's get the parameters.
Let's hash it out. This
So-
is my lawyer, Aaron. I see you brought your lawyer.
So
Sean.
here's the thing.
I'm not her lawyer.
These
I represent myself.
this is what I count as Betty being in the final episode.
Okay, we have to.
If we see January Jones acting in a scene,
At all.
even if she doesn't say any
No
dialogue,
words, just her face.
if we hear her voice, that counts.
Ooh, I agree.
But
I agree.
Okay.
But
Yeah, you're right.
but if we see a photo of her, I don't think that counts.
I agree with that too.
Or as a ghost.
No, that
no,
counts.
as a ghost, that counts.
No, I think the ghost shouldn't count.
No, why should it
the
count?
ghost counts.
No, like Betty as a person, because ghost is a
No,
figment of
that's-
imagination.
no,
Ghost counts. Ghost
No,
counts.
Ghost counts.
Ghost
Ghost counts.
is the figment of the character's
but
imagination
that's
of
what I'm
whoever
saying.
that is.
That's
Like
what I'm saying.
Katie.
I'm not
Take the
saying
bet.
that Betty meets Don on the West Coast.
No,
I'm saying
because
that the character
the
appears.
ghost. I think the ghost thing
You
would be.
guys can have a separate bet about the ghost.
The ghost thing is implied that it's a creation of Don's mind rather than the actual person.
That's
itself.
No, that's what I'm saying. Is
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Betty appears out west. I'm saying that the character.
I mean, not even out west, as just a ghost.
But
It's just a
but
ghost.
that's what he was saying.
That's
is
what
that
I'm saying.
he thought she would appear as a ghost.
No,
so
so
that's
I
why
think this
he
bet
would-
is based on her not being a ghost.
No,
real person.
No. I'm saying that the character in any capacity,
chime in.
just like Bert. So
I'm not making
before-
the bet.
Before
Oh, Jesus
I was
Christ,
making.
this is-
I was making
No,
weak,
fine,
weak-
fine, you're right.
I was
As a
making
ghost,
weak
fine.
predictions. Now I'm making a bold one, saying
Oh,
that I think that
interesting.
Betty will
Finally.
appear. January Jones will appear on screen. Maybe not saying anything. We will either hear her voice, we will see her, or we will see her talking, ghost or otherwise. I think we will see her. That's what I'm. That's
And
what I'm
I say
playing.
no.
And
So,
you're saying
okay.
we will not see her at all.
Nope.
Okay.
So just to clarify, if we see January Jones acting, or if we hear January Jones's voice, Katie, you owe Joseph some money.
10.
But
$10.
if we don't see her at all, or if we only see a photo of her, Joseph, you owe Katie
And
some
I agree
money.
with that. I think a photo doesn't count.
Wow. Well, that's a good way to get to the final question of the podcast, which is this: will Mad Men stick the landing? And by that I mean, will Mad Men deliver a finale that you're satisfied by? You personally.
Great question. Great
Wow,
question.
that's a good.
Sean, let's start with you.
You know, it's tricky. I think it will be a satisfying enough ending, but of course, like, I want it, you know, what I want right now is just something that makes me feel comfortable. And part of that comfort is feeling uncomfortable, if that makes any sense. Like,
Sure.
there needs to be a certain degree of vagueness left, but there has to be a certain degree of closure.
You don't want it to be wrapped up in a neat bow,
Yeah.
but there has to be some sense of an ending. Not, let's say, an abrupt stop, but let's maybe more of a fading out.
Yeah, and I think based on this next episode, this could make it like everything worth it, or, you know, the end. Like, I just, again, I'm so vague about it because I don't want to like try to predict anything because I don't want to like psych myself out.
Sure.
But I think the main thing for me is if it hits that like right amount of vagueness, right amount of like, you know, conclusion, and where I keep thinking about it, but at the same time feel comfortable with it being done, I think it would be perfect. But the possibilities of that happening are I think you're trying to hit some weird spot. And that's for me personally. I don't know what other people want out of it. I think that's the tricky part is you won't be able to satisfy everybody.
Oh, right. Katie, is Mad Men going to stick the ending?
Okay. I think with sticking the ending, it's a tricky situation. And it's similar to Carrie Strong.
Carrie Strong?
Yes.
I love that.
Well, I'm using a gymnastics reference
Yes.
to stick the landing.
When she stuck the landing with one foot, but was teetering like that. That's the way I think it will be.
Oh, I think
Ooh,
I
good
think
sports analogy.
I think
Carrie
she
Strong.
really stuck that. I don't think she teetered that much when she. That's the one was so. No, I will.
You want to bet on that?
Right now.
Fine.
I remember watching that on bated breath and remembering
me too.
it is unbelievable how firmly she stuck that without teetering on one leg.
She was teetering.
We're
And
gonna watch
also,
it
Chris
afterwards.
Kattan played her on SNL, and that was awesome. And he was
That was great. So you do think that you'll be satisfied when the episode ends? I mean, obviously, we're all going to feel bittersweet because it's over and it's a great show and we like it, and that's why we're doing this podcast in the first place. But you feel like you'll be satisfied with the ending?
No, to be honest, I don't.
No, so you don't think they'll stick the landing? The what was the phrase I just used? I don't know.
No,
Again.
I feel like I'm never satisfied with the ending of shows anyway. I think it's just me, to be honest.
Okay, Joseph, what do you think? Is Mad Men, are they gonna
I
are
think
they gonna finish strong? Are you gonna be satisfied with this ending? What's
do.
your prediction?
I think that based on all the great large shows that I've seen, Breaking Bad, The Sopranos, and others, still have yet to watch The Wire's ending. But I think that Matthew Weiner in this show has just got a great sense, a great natural, organic flow. And to me, he's going to stick the landing, not the way that we want him to, because I think that's what the other ones upset us with. I didn't see Lost, but it seemed like when they stuck that landing, it upset the viewers of wait a minute, that's not what you had been showing us throughout this entire thing. Mm-hmm. What were we watching this for? And Matthew Weiner seems like he's got his direction. Audience be damned, but his direction is so true that we really like it. We go along with it. It rings true to us. I think that he's going to stick it his own way, but the way that he does will give us that feeling of great closure. Miho agrees with me. I just think that he's going to do it in a way that's going to blow our minds. I really do, and it's not going to be because it's this big, glorious ending. It's just going to ring so true.
Yeah.
It might almost be painful. It might just be oh my gosh, I can't believe that's how it ended.
What do you think, Aaron?
I think he'll stick the landing. I do have faith in him. The Sopranos, that's kind of the go-to one that I think about probably the most because Matthew Weiner did work on that show, but obviously he didn't write the ending to that show. And that's actually an ending that I think has gotten better over time. I've sort of accepted it more. It was more shocking and abrasive when you first saw it, but in retrospect now it seems to make more sense. And I think he will deliver an ending that's similar to that in terms of the feeling you get, which maybe initially you're going wow, really? This is the last final scene of Mad Men? But maybe a week or two later when you look back on it, you're how else could the show have ended?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that, and the difference between those two shows, though, is the real life, follow these characters, change through time story that Mad Men was, as opposed to The Sopranos. The Sopranos was a little bit more linear, very much more specific. I think that if he does something similar, like you said, it will resonate, I would say, faster than The Sopranos, because people for years were upset with The Sopranos ending. I think that if it's as abrupt, we might have those feelings of ugh, I don't know if I like that. But after a week, like you said, we'll be you know what? That is the way that it had to go out. Kind of like when people die, where it's oh God, I really wish they hadn't gone.
That's true.
Yeah, it's when my grandpa passed away. I remember.
Take a shot, by the way. Joseph just made a reference to his family.
To my
if you're
family.
listening.
Yeah, if you're playing the Mad Men drinking game. But when he passed away, I remember I tried to hang on. I was really tired, and I was you know what? I was like, this SOB is going to wait till I can't hold on any longer. And I had to go sleep. And I knew as I was walking down the hall to go to my bed that that little rascal was going to go in his sleep. And sure enough, when I woke up to the call that he had passed, I was like, this is the way that it was going to go. I had no control over that. And I think that that's exactly how this show will end. Not the way that my grandpa passed away, but that feeling.
That was it. I think that's a really good way to close. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
That was good. That little rascal.
All right, before we go, I want to call up the television guru, Eliott. Eliott is a good friend of mine from college, and we've been watching Mad Men religiously since it debuted. He's also been the inspiration for this podcast in many ways, because for the longest time, we would get together every Sunday night and break down all the drama and all the minutiae from the latest episode. Although we had to stop doing that, but for good reason. Since meeting his lovely wife, Eliott has relocated to the great state of Maryland. However, with the big series finale looming, I wanted to call him up and get his take on this season so far. E.T., welcome to the pod.
Oh, glad to be here, Aaron. How you doing?
Good. Good to have you here. What do you think of Season 7, Part 2 so far?
Season 7, Part 2, it's tough to view it as a new season. It's like I've been having a hard time in trying to view it through the prism of Season 1 going into Season 2. I mean, I'm a big Mad Men guy. I'm probably more of a Breaking Bad fan, and everything I see it through is it's tough to separate the Breaking Bad from the Mad Men. And it's a typical Mad Men season where it starts slow and builds, but that build has been kind of accelerated based upon only having the 7 episodes.
Right, usually they have those 13 episodes to do that build, and obviously, like what you just said, they've had to accelerate it.
Yeah, the 7 episodes, the build is accelerated, and I view it as like a season 8. I don't really see it as a 2 season. Like if these were back to back, would I have different feelings? Maybe, but we're moving straight forward here. I don't know.
Well, the first episode of Season 7, Part 2, there was a huge jump in time, more so than episode to episode. So even that first episode had the feeling of a season premiere, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it's one of those things like, did you ever, if you had said 5-6 years ago, back in Season 2 and 3, we're going to make it to the 70s, or did you think we were going to end on the 70s? Because now we're in the 70s, and now with this last episode coming up, I'm sure we'll talk about in a bit, how far are we going into the 70s? How far past this, and do we want to move?
Well, let's talk about that for a second. I'm sure you've read on the internet this very popular D.B. Cooper theory where Don Draper becomes D.B. Cooper. However, that historical event begins November 1971. Do you think we'll go that far into the future? I mean, to me, that seems super unlikely, and only because in the most recent episode, when Sally opens up that letter that Betty writes, the funeral stuff, it's dated on there October 1970. So there's no way we're jumping ahead 13 months, right?
That would be a big leap. I mean, up until this point, everything I've seen, I have not been optimistic that we're going to get everyone's happy ending, where everyone's going to be nice, wrapped up in a tidy bow. I mean, as we've talked, I've told you after the podcast, everything I've seen is these are just seeing glimpses of these people's lives. Like, we're not seeing growth. We're not seeing people completely change. We're just seeing glimpses of their life, and maybe it's the most important part of their life, and maybe it's not. For me, I always thought the end was just going to be fade out. These people's lives go on. We're just not going to see it. Great instance from this week with Pete, him and Trudy. I'm a big Trudy guy.
Oh, of course. We've talked many times, obviously not in this podcast, but we've talked many times before. That's a very solid couple. The Pete Trudy couple.
Oh, can you beat them doing the Charleston at the wedding, at Roger's wedding? Oh, it was beautiful. But for that, I just feel as they're moving on to Wichita, they're going to go on with their lives. They're going to go keep moving. Maybe they stay together. Maybe Pete philanders a little bit more. He is Pete. He's got to do Pete things. But for the most part, that's just where we're going to end and where we're going to leave it. But I think what I'm curious about is I was much more optimistic at the end of this week that we're going to get some resolution to pretty much most people's storylines. I think they're going to wrap things up more than I thought they would, especially seeing where they left Dawn basically is stripped. Everything's taken away. I mean, he's had stuff taken away before, but he really has very little, nothing left anymore.
He does have that Sears bag.
Oh, he has the Sears bag. I can't imagine what he has in there. I mean, couple
Change of
sandwiches
clothes,
and a suit.
maybe
He's
a
just walking
sandwich.
around with a folded up suit. You know, you never know when he's going to suit up for some Legion meeting to go and shoot the breeze with the boys. And one of the things I love about the end of this season is look at all of the great that guy actors they've had throughout the entire this second part of this season. I mean, look at the people you had sitting around the table. You got Roy from The Office hanging out there, the hotel owner, he's one of that guys. Look at Joan's lover, good old Bruce Greenwood, played the president a couple times on National Treasure. They just have that guys. Even Stan Rizzo hooking up with the art director in
Pima.
the closet. Yeah, Pima. These just great people just being like, hey, at Mad Men's ending, I'm a Mad Men fan. You got a part for me? I don't care how big it is. I'm going to show up on Mad Men. So they just got this great murderer's row of people just breezing through the universe. But
Off the top of your head, when you look back at Mad Men, what was the greatest that guy or that girl moment? I want to say Nev Campbell.
Oh, that was the one before you finished. That was the one that was jumping to mind. Nev Campbell was good. I mean, they got a lot of people before they became big stars. I mean, Rachel Menken, his first kind of big lady in season 1. She went on to bigger things with Sons of Anarchy, but Nev Campbell was kind of a shooting star. Like, Nev Campbell? This is going to go somewhere, right? She's coming back. She's going to stay. She's going to hook up with Don. No, just one off on the airplane. He turns her down and just kind of moves on.
So, who do you think, aside from Don, who will we see in the final episode? I think we're done with Betty. I think we're done with Joan. I think we're done with Pete. I feel like we're going to see Peggy again. I feel like we're going to see Roger.
Who do you feel like we need to see? Do you feel like we need to see those people?
We need to see Peggy. The first episode of Mad Men ever is Peggy's first day on the job.
Are you telling me that Peggy walking into the office with Bert Cooper's octopus, pleasuring a woman with a cigarette hanging out of her mouth is not the perfect
Here's the thing.
way
If
to
that
leave
is her
Peggy?
last scene, it's a great last scene.
It is. If that was the last scene we saw of her in the last episode, bravo, Peggy. You're walking out a winner. You just won Mad Men.
Do you think it's possible
picture.
that
I mean,
the
where can I
final
buy that
episode would
picture?
just
I'm
be
gonna
all
post it.
Dawn?
All Dawn? I mean, sorry, one more time?
Do you think it's possible that the final episode will just be all Dawn? We won't go back to New York. We won't see what's going on at McCann. We won't see any of the former Sterling Cooper folks.
It's possible. I mean, that's the great thing about Mad Men. You don't watch it. I guess I don't watch it trying always to predict. I mean, every week anything could happen. I mean, if you told me at the beginning of this season that the penultimate episode would have Dawn removed from everything, driving around Kansas, hanging out in a motel with a broken car for a week, going to the American Legion, mentoring some woebegone youth in the middle of the heartland. I mean, I think I'd be pretty upset. I'd probably raise an eyebrow and be like, that's all you want to spend? That's all you want to spend this hour? You got 6-7 hours left, and then you're gone for good, and that's how we're going to spend it? So they could really go anywhere, I think.
Well, one of the reasons that the show is able to go anywhere is because of their great on the next episode of Mad Men features. Now, you texted me. I thought this was great. We're now saying goodbye to something that's really unparalleled. I can't think of any other television show where the creator of the show hates making those things so much, and now they're gone.
Oh, absolutely. It's like the two guys sitting around, Harry Crane drink a drink. What? Don't say that. Get in here. And you have no clue what's going to happen next week. And I watched those just for the comedy. Someone needs to clip those together Mad Lib style, and you can pretty much say anything. Which
Do a
is
supercut of it. Well, I don't know if you know this, so I read a little Washington Post article, and I thought this was really interesting. So Matthew Weiner obviously has had some issues with AMC in the past. This is all well documented. And one of their issues is that he has a different philosophy about previewing episodes than those folks do. So the compromise that apparently they came to is, he was like, look, we'll do previews, but you can only pull footage from the first 20 minutes of the episode. I don't know if you knew that, but I thought that was kind of an interesting twist. And it makes sense then, because you never see those things that happen in the middle act or final act of the episode.
Yeah, I mean, AMC and Matthew Weiner have kind of set their whole conflict has kind of set the tone for not just the show, but really it set the tone for that whole network. I mean, if you remember after season 4, they took 18 months off. I mean, the next shot we get after season 4, Don proposes to Megan, goodbye, Dr. Faye. I would have loved to have seen him end the show with Marry Dr. Faye. I think it would have been a good move for him, but instead he goes with the hot secretary. But when they took that 18 months off, they had those really bad contract negotiations. And then all of a sudden, he was demanding the sky and the moon. He was demanding all this money. He was looking for more creative control. And then all of a sudden, 18 months go by, then Mad Men's coming back. And because of that contract, people were pretty upset. They thought Walking Dead kind of got delayed and got a little bit less money because they were a little bit more wary of giving full control to a creative person. They were also wary about Breaking Bad, which Breaking Bad was in second position to Mad Men for how many years? It was AMC was the home of Mad Men, and Breaking Bad's pretty good too. But now all of a sudden, Breaking Bad's got to get a budget and contract after Mad Men, and then all of a sudden they didn't have a lot of money and they were shorted, and now all of a sudden the Breaking Bad season kind of was truncated. So that success led to Mad Men having a kind of broken up last season too. So kind of you can trace it all back to Weiner and those contract negotiations after season 4 for both the truncated season, because that led to Breaking Bad's, and now this one.
Let me throw this theory past you. I was trying to think of an analogy for the next episode of Mad Men promos that we see to something else in the world, because it does seem like something that's super unique. And this is the analogy that I came up with. The sports equivalent of next week on Mad Men is the Greg Popovich third quarter interview.
Just the complete randomness of one word. It's like, Pop, how are we doing tonight? Fine.
Not only that, the randomness of it, but it also has the component of there's someone, in that case Greg Popovich, in the other case Matthew Weiner, doing something that they don't want to do, but for corporate reasons they have to.
And just the utter contempt that is dripping off both of these analogies. Yeah, that's a good one. I can see that. Popovich has no interest in doing that. Weiner is like, why do we need these next week on? At some point, you think the network would have been like, fine, Matt, we don't have to have next week on. I mean, do they really need people to watch through the credits? Do I really need to know who the second cinematographer on the backup unit was? No, we're doing fine. So the fact that AMC stuck with it, I guess more power to them. I mean, you notice they don't rerun those commercials anywhere.
And it turns out that we actually have already seen the last one of those, because they're not doing one of those for the finale.
As they shouldn't. I mean, most shows don't. I can't think of too many shows that have a next week on the season finale, at least for these big cultural touchstone shows.
Right.
Well, let's get back to some of the, like what you said earlier. I'm curious, who do you feel like we have to see this week? Because I feel like a lot of the people have had big moments, and I think the person outside of Don that I most want to see that needs something to wrap up is Roger. I think we have to see Roger one more time. If anyone else besides Don, I'm okay where they left Peggy. She has a friend in Stan Rizzo. She maybe doesn't have her love life. But for me, Roger is just kind of there. We haven't gotten much from Roger. Are we saying that he's at McCann Erickson just biding his time and he's with Marie Calvé and bam, that's his end of his life? I don't think so. That doesn't seem like, of all where they've left people, I can't see where they left Roger.
Yeah, because you can imagine, Joan, things work out for her because she's probably going to move to California and be with Richard, right? Betty, obviously, we know what's going to happen there. Peggy, I suppose I wouldn't be too surprised if we didn't see her because, like what we just discussed, she did have a great ending. Roger really is struggling with the decision that he made, selling the company to McCann. At the time, he thought it was a great idea. He thought he was saving the company. And now he just seems filled with regret by what a mistake it's turned out to be. Like, he's totally lost his autonomy and a certain amount of vanity because, like he said, when your last name is on the building or your last name is part of the company, there's a lot of pride that goes with that. So I do think we're going to see Roger. Where it goes, though, I really don't know.
he's got a lot of, for me, he's got a lot of open threads. I mean, look what he did to the company. What's he going to do? Walk around McCann Erickson? It's like, hey, there's Teddy Shaw. He's hanging out, doing work, just like nose to the grind zone. Hey, Harry Crane, you better get a lunch ticket with Harry Crane. Otherwise, everyone's gone. And then the other thing is, remember his daughter. Is his daughter still living up at that commune with the hippies? I mean, we haven't seen much of that.
Margaret.
The last shot we had of the kid was him, his son-in-law, and his ex-wife, and his grandson.
Watching the moon landing, right?
Watching the moon landing. So they had that one little family unit, and she's just out there. And now he's got Megan's mom is like, I don't know. The way they've been ending the show, Pete gets a happy ending. You can see where Joan is going and how she could be happy if we never see her again. I mean, she loved that job, so she's leaving a job she loved. But Roger, I mean, was he going to have another heart attack? I don't know.
I mean, unless they bring some twins out.
Oh, jeez. Or some LSD. He's a big LSD fan. We know how much he likes to hit the LSD.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about Roger's drug proclivities.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of things that we might see in the final episode, I discussed this with the partners earlier. Do you think Don will have one final vision of a ghost in the finale? Doesn't matter who it is, but of any ghost.
Any ghost.
Anna Draper. Probably not Bert Cooper. We just saw him. Maybe Adam Whitman.
Maybe his brother. I mean, we haven't seen his brother since what, season 2 when he hanged himself.
I thought there was a brief image of his brother where Don had some weird dream about going to the dentist, and he was like, "Hey, let's hang out," and you saw the marks on his neck.
That sounds about right. I mean, are we going to a place where Don Draper's lost everything, and the only thing for him left to lose is literally the name Don Draper? Does he go back to being Dick Whitman? Because now that he's taken everything else away, now he stops being Don Draper and goes back to Dick Whitman. That would be the last thing he has to lose other than his kids. I mean, we can talk about that. Is he going to lose his kids to Henry Francis? It's like, what does he have?
Did Don really ever have his kids? I mean,
well, not Bobby. No, not Bobby. Which Bobby are you talking about? 5,
Bobby
6,
3,
7,
Bobby 4, Bobby 2.
I think he has a relationship with Sally. He has a relationship there. The boys, I mean, we just never see it. They're little. They can only do so much. But
it doesn't help that Baby Gene is named after Grandpa Gene, who Don hated.
This is true. But I don't know where Don goes. I'm of the mind that Don can go one of two places. Either they keep taking things away from him and he becomes Dick Whitman again and just goes off into a different life, or goes and takes care of the kids and leaves advertising together. Or have you been struck by how much they've mentioned Coca-Cola this year? Even this week, Coca-Cola gets mentioned by Pete. There's been talk of Coca-Cola. Hey, can you fix this Coca-Cola machine? Jim Hobart on the initial pitch. Hey, Coca-Cola. Are we expecting, wouldn't you love to see one more Don rides into the advertising agency, completely stripped down, and bam, he's making the big pitch for Coca-Cola. He's back in the game. Like, I would like to see that, even though I don't think it's very likely.
We've seen that before. We've seen that countless times. I don't know if I would necessarily want to see that again because, we've already been down that road. And I don't think we're likely to see it because when Don was talking to that up-and-coming con man Andy, the guy who's cleaning his room, he said to him, speaking in the past tense, I used to be in the advertising business. So you can tell that in Don's mind, he's disconnected from that. He's moved on.
Yeah, I that's what I said. I think that part's very unlikely. They've just either got a lot of money from Coke to advertise in this last season, or I thought maybe that was too many plants or too many mentions not to be setting something up.
I think Coca-Cola, because it's set in right now we're in 1970, and maybe let's say McDonald's or Burger King wasn't as big. I think Coca-Cola is just sort of shorthand for the biggest company you could do advertising for. Yeah,
it could be. But they layered that in kind of thick for Mad Men to just keep repeating it. That you're like, what are they doing here? This seems a little odd. But they could drop it completely, and it could be Don stuck in Iowa or whatnot, or he could be chasing his waitress again. I have no clue.
Well, in the interest of balance, I believe there have been previous episodes where Pete Campbell was working on the Mountain Dew account.
Yeah. So there's accounts there. You're saying there's accounts there that are there. We just haven't seen them.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
All right, well, let me ask you one final question. This is the question I just asked everyone else. Do you think Mad Men will stick the landing? And by that I mean, will Mad Men deliver an ending that satisfies you?
To satisfy me, it would be hard not to satisfy me, because I don't think it's one of those shows that's a constant build. Like I keep comparing it to Mad Men because I don't think it's impossible not. Those two shows, the way they came about, the same network, kind of different trajectories. Mad Men came on, burned hot. People really enjoyed it, even though the ratings were never there, and kind of not really slowed down, kind of kept the same, but just kind of faded a little bit from the public consciousness or the kind of the notice. Whereas Breaking Bad was slow burn. You watch those first episodes, and it's a little light. It's a little rough. You're watching it, you're not quite sure. It started during the writer's strike, and then it just kind of slowly built to the top of the mountain and just crested. I don't think Mad Men's that kind of show. I don't think it's brought those kind of casual fans, so they can really end it wherever they want. They're not really trying, I don't really think they need to stick the landing, because they're not really building. Like I said, it's more of a snapshot in these people's lives and their interactions and how they came about, and ending the show by ending the agency. These people are drifting from each other's lives. They're moving on to different phases, just like we're moving on to different shows or different things to watch and see. So I don't really think they need to stick the landing, because I don't think it's that kind of show. It's not Lost. It's not Breaking Bad. It's not some of these shows that are building to a crescendo. It's kind of always been that high wire act that's just kind of stayed there.
In terms of, let's say, tone, it does seem a little similar to The Sopranos. Do you think it might have a Sopranos-like ending? Not that it would abruptly cut and fade to black, but have an ending where some people, it's really open to interpretation.
It depends on the character. I mean, Sopranos was
it's going to be Don, though, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's got to be Don. It's his show. I mean, for a while there, you could say it was the Don was 1 and Peggy was 1A, but even that is kind of faded. I mean, can you imagine a Mad Men episode without Don? No. Just like you can't imagine a Sopranos episode without Tony. The difference is on The Sopranos, by the end of The Sopranos, who was left? The end of The Sopranos was Paulie Walnut sitting outside the meat shop with a cat. And that was it. Everyone else was gone. They were all dead. Who was left? Here on this show, no one's dying, well, except for Betty, rest in peace. But in that case,
bye Birdie.
Everyone's there, and everyone else has already either got their ending, or we're hoping to see like a little bit more. Mm-hmm. We're hoping to see a little bit more of a glimpse. So, yeah, it's got to be Don. But like I said, I just don't think it's that big of a show. I mean, what kind of cliffhanger could they have? Don staring out a window that's open on the 30th floor, and they cut away, and did he jump? Did he not jump? The big popular fan theory that were leading up to Don's suicide. I just don't see it.
By the way, let me ask you, because we actually discussed that earlier, that particular fan theory. I think Matthew Weiner was aware of that theory, and I believe, not in this most recent episode, but the one prior, when Don begins his career at McCann and then quickly ends his career at McCann. There's that one scene where he's in the office and he walks up to the window and kind of pushes it a little bit.
Yeah,
I think Matthew Weiner did that as a little subtle wink to fans of that theory.
I don't see it. I just don't see it. I mean, he's lost everything, but look at him sitting on that bench smiling. Does he seem like someone who is done with life, who's throwing it all away? No, he's going to move on to something different. And what that's going to be.
No. I should say, not that they're actually going to do that, but it was sort of him acknowledging that theory exists, but that he wasn't going to go through with it. Kind of like it was a quick psych out. Like, oh, here's Don. He's approaching the window. He's trying to open it. Okay. Just kidding.
Well, yeah, that's a topic we could do a whole podcast on. How much do these showrunners read their own press clippings? I mean, you can look at shows that have benefited and been hurt by it. But I mean, look at this week with Betty.
Example A, Lost.
Betty getting a happy ending. How many people have? Well, don't bring up Lost. But look at Betty this week. Betty got a chance to kind of go against the grain for a lot of people. She had a moment with Sally. She was dealing with things her own way. You may not like how she dealt with the news that she was dying, but she faced it how she, as a person, would face it with a lot of dignity by saying, you know what, I got months to live. I'm not going to fight the cancer because I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I'm not going to spend my last days with no hair laying on the bed watching Henry Francis cry all the time. I'm going to class. And I'm going to write my daughter a note. I'm going to tell her that she's going to be okay. And Betty got a moment. And how many times have we heard on the internet, Betty's terrible, Betty's awful, why is she on the show? I mean, look, Weiner probably doesn't even like January Jones. He put her in a fat suit for, what, a year and a half? I mean, like, just take this beautiful woman and put her in a fat suit in the prime of her life? Yeah. But there she is. And they gave her a moment. So I think I can see that. I can see him putting that little nod into the people and putting that nod into the fans, that fan theory.
Well, we will all see what happens this Sunday night. It's all coming to an end. E.T., thanks for coming on the pod. We'll have to have you on next week to get your reaction to the big series finale of Mad Men.
Oh, absolutely. We'll watch it Sunday night, and then we'll try and watch some Game of Thrones and try and make sense of that. It's a nice little 1-2 combo. Next time we can talk some more about that.
Sounds good, my friend. All right, that does it for this week's episode of the Partners Meeting. We'll be back next week to recap the big series finale, talk about some of our favorite episodes, and figure out where Mad Men ranks in television history. If you'd like to join the conversation, you can email us at thepartnersmeeting@gmail.com or tweet us using the handle @partnersmeeting. You can also listen to previous episodes on our website, jbushell.podbean.com. On behalf of Joseph, Sean, and Katie, I'm Aaron Hartung saying thanks for listening. And let's give the final word to Betty Francis.
Sally, I always worried about you because you marched to the beat of your own drum. But now I know that's good. I know your life will be an adventure. I love you, Mom.